Hello, my name is Enzo,
And I'm the co-host, Jessica Brown.
and we're here in Beaconsfield today, and we're very fortunate to be interviewing two very interesting holistic practitioners. And today we have Sheila Bicknell.
Yep, Bicknell. Yep.
First question is what, how, and where. So what do you do? How do you do it? Like if you have any accessories, and where do you do it?
Okay. So what? What do I do?
Yes.
So I use the name BlueWater Oracle. So I consider myself an oracle, which means that I'm an intuitive guide. So I bring people messages and information, and my tool is oracle cards. So like these are examples of an oracle deck, different cards on them, and they're basically like my doorway in. They're a tool that I use, and then from there I get intuitive messages that I would use to give information, insights, help people get clarity, understanding what they're doing, what they need to know.
And what kind of client would come and see you, and why? Why would somebody?
Most of my clients are going to be coming when they feel as though maybe there's something very heavy going on in their life, or they feel unclear, they're not sure on the next step to take. So they might be feeling a little bit lost. They might be asking themselves the same questions over and over, or literally they just want that sense of connection. They want to be able to feel as though they're connecting to something bigger than themselves and their friends and family.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Now, you know, in the holistic field, everybody has a story of how they got to where they are. Obviously, you weren't always a practitioner. What were you doing before? How did you transcend? How did you get here? What is the story?
The journey.
The journey.
Yeah. I always had a sense of really being interested in spiritual things, in things that are psychic. But I never personally felt that I had any gifts or any abilities. I was always very sensitive, always been very emotional. So I did have that aspect. My background in work is actually nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian. So my background's a university degree, and I have a private practice that is still ongoing at the moment. But through some personal challenges, let's say like that, personal life adventures, where my health was at risk, my life plans were shifting, emotions were very intense, the idea of finding a connection with my own spirituality and what that means to me, and then these gifts that I can maybe bring to other people, became more paramount, became more important.
Wow.
And the more I got into it, then the more I found I loved it. And the more I felt that the universe was supporting me and bringing me tools and people to help. And then like any skill I learned, I practiced, I did courses, found oracle decks that I like.
So this is more fun for you.
Yeah. I love nutrition. I love helping people with it, and I think it's a holistic base for everybody.
Right.
It's so important, and I appreciate the journey I've been on, because when I'm consulting one-on-one with people, we can be talking about very, very personal stuff. Sometimes it's fun stuff. Sometimes it's very intense. And my background, having consulted on disease states, on stress levels in people, and why they're eating what they're eating, has really helped me to be able to now sit with people and feel pretty comfortable no matter what comes up.
Good segue.
So that's helped me.
You got it ready.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, especially I like that you shared your story, because I hear that over and over again, that people, they feel before they get into this that they're sensitive, they're emotional, but they feel like they don't have any special gifts. And this just proves that everyone has a gift.
Sure.
And we just have to be open to it and start on the journey and discover what those are.
And sometimes you'll also forget parts of your own path.
Yeah.
So the kind of thing that really rounded it out for me was I was already doing cards. I was already learning about how to do oracle readings and using my intuition and honing it better in my own ways that I use it. And then I went through, some of the people who know me already know this story. I went through one of the boxes in my house, you know, the boxes you have with all your teenage stuff or your young person stuff, so the agendas and everything. And I found a deck of cards that was given to me by a childhood friend. We've known each other since we were very little, and her family was Swiss German, so we're a Swiss deck of playing cards. So they have different suits, 4 suits like a regular deck, but it's roses, balls, acorns, and shields. But on my deck, attached with the old style hair band for kids, long hair, and a little paper note was in my own young person handwriting what I attributed every card to.
Oh, no.
So I had forgotten as I started this journey, and then that reminded me that, oh yeah, look at that, I used to pull cards for myself at night in bed for the next day.
That's so cool.
So,
I love that story.
wow.
You know, it really ties it together, and I had totally forgotten. I mean, I'm presuming some part of myself always knew, and that's why I was being led back to first tarot and then oracle cards. But finding that deck was like a woohoo!
By the way, now that we're on that subject, what's
Yeah.
the difference between tarot and oracle?
Tarot and oracle, yeah. A lot of people, I find when I'm discussing with people, more people know about tarot, they understand or they can recognize a term rather than oracle. So tarot cards are based on 4 suits, depending on the style of card. They almost always have 4 suits, and then they'll have the court cards like the knight, the queen, the king, and then they'll have the major arcana, which are bigger events. So it could be chariot, it could be death, it could be the moon, the star. Depending on the decks, they might use different names. But they almost always follow a similar symbolism and a similar meaning to the cards. And there's a lot of richness in that. So I started with tarot. I appreciate them. I think people who use them are fantastically skilled. I ended up going more towards oracle because I felt for me it allowed my intuitive side to a bit more play. It just allowed it to have a bit more opening. Now people can read tarot very intuitively. It just depends on their own skills and their preference. And I ended up finding one deck that I started to work with. Oracle cards can have pictures, no pictures, words, no words. They can be really different. They can be on any subject. And so for people, it's just finding, if they want to work with cards, it's finding ones that either call to them or they feel called to. I can read tarot cards. I prefer oracle. I like oracle cards.
Okay, that's great. Everybody seems to be in a phase of wakening up. How does what you do play into that? So when someone comes to you, is there aspects of that you help?
Definitely, yeah. A lot of people feel as though there's a shift. There could be awakening, could be just shifting, changing, and they don't always have support. They don't always know where to turn, how to explain some things. So because I have quite a bit of knowledge on a lot of different aspects of spirituality, including cards, including belief systems, different things, I can help people to be guided on whatever comes up through the cards as being a priority for them. So if it's a belief system that maybe they need to work on, or it's time to release something from the past, that's come up a lot in the month of June for me, releasing stuff that people, for me and for people I've worked with. But it could also be bringing in the support system that comes from whatever people believe in, whether it's the universe, whether they believe it's from divine, whether they believe it's from helpers, spirit helpers, however they want. So I can bring in that support, and it gives them a comfortable, safe environment to have this discussion. So nobody's judging them, nobody's saying you're crazy, you're too woo-woo, what are you doing? It's really, I tell people, I'm like, you pretty much can't go too woo-woo for me. I try not to go too much for other people until I know them better. But if stuff comes up in the cards, then my belief is that it's that person's highest self, and then their support team that's basically coming up to say, this is information that's going to help you. And when you're waking up or you're shifting in things, it can be really unsettling if you don't have a tribe or a group of people who can help you, or anybody to turn to. Some people have nobody, so that's where I come in.
So woo-woo can be stabilizing.
Yeah. Woo-woo can be good. Woo-woo can be great. Some people just call it spiritual. Some people distinct different things within that. And so it's finding a way that feels good for people, so that as they're shifting, or as things around them are changing, or people around them, they have support and they have guidance.
Very important.
And then they work on it from what I bring up with cards and with discussion with people.
Excellent. Sheila, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years, let's say?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I did my first event, live evening event last week, which was great. I was super pleased, very supported, felt wonderful. So I would actually like to do more of those because there's an energy within a group that is very different than one-on-one. People can really support each other, and you get pinpoints of information that comes through the group. So doing more groups for me and more events would be something I'd like to do. I already do individual one-on-one. I do some videos, some live, some Facebook. So I'm kind of exploring different things, and my hope is that over the next 5 years, I'm just going to be able to do more of it and bring this to people so they can understand that yes, it is a real support system that they can use if they feel drawn to it.
Very good.
That's wonderful.
And did we cover where we are?
We did not cover where we are. We know where we are. So we are in Beaconsfield. We're in what would have been known as Bow Repair Village in one time, so near Woodland, and we're in a very nice yellow house that's been converted into offices. So on the main level, it's a wellness center called the Yellow Umbrella, and we're on the second floor, which is known as the West Island Wellness Center. So there's a few different practitioners in this location. So it's a beautiful, great energy feeling in this house. So I think most people who work here feel very supported and within our own environment. That's why we've been drawn here.
That's
And not
really
just-
why we came here,
yeah.
just to come and feel the
Just to hang
vibes.
out, as you do, as people do,
And not just in a house too, but in a whole area. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful
Yeah.
area. We're
Yeah.
near the water
Yes.
and
And
everything's
we have massive
gorgeous.
trees on this property, so
Yes.
it is, there's some old wisdom in this area too, which
So
is
we touched on this a little bit, but I want to ask you, what are the most common questions that you get from your clients?
the most common questions. Right now, the most common question is about career.
Okay.
So we talked about people shifting, awakening. So there is a big change in people wanting to change jobs or trying to think, what would I do next? What's this project? So that's a big one.
Okay.
And then usually relationships. Love, which is great. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens in a card reading, or at least my card readings, and I always advise people, is that even if you ask a question, for example, on career,
Mm-hmm.
it might go relationship first. The cards may go there.
Oh, it's interesting.
And it's the idea, what I tell people is that it's the idea that the cards may know more than you know, or than you want to know, than you're aware of. So they'll guide you somewhere, but it's always going to be helping towards that other question.
Okay. Well, great. And I've seen a lot of success stories in this field. I see a lot of people that helped me. I know a lot of people helped you, and
Absolutely.
now you're helping people. So do you have a story of a client that you've helped, a transformational story? Because everyone that comes to see us, there's a transformation that happens. So do you have a success story, one that you're especially proud of?
Good
For
question.
clients.
I don't have one that specifically comes to mind. I do have, actually, I have one person who has come back, every 6 months, and sometimes people don't think about coming back to see me.
Mm-hmm.
And what's been great about meeting with her is that we've done it by Skype, is that we confirm what happened, what we chatted about, what's shifted and changed since the last one. Then we get into the moment of where she is now, and then we get a bit of what does she need to know moving forward.
A timeline.
Yeah, a timeline, and I haven't had that with everybody. So with her, it's really given this, for me, it's given this great view of how it can be a useful service.
Yeah.
And she's so fantastic to give me feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's validating what I do, how I do it, and then helping her. So that's been a great one.
Good.
For other people, it's even within an hour or 2 hours, it's seeing that shift in them from coming in with the weight of the world or the weight of the question, heavy, and they leave and they're smiling, they're lighter,
Yes.
they have a bit of a plan of what they're working on, or we also just trust that they always have a plan of what they're working on, but there's also a trust that we're working on energy as well. I believe that we're doing that. So sometimes there's just a change that happens. It'll open them to something else that might not have been there before, and there's that hope of what's going to come next.
You were saying also that you started out more as a nutritionist,
Yeah.
right? So you have your conventional scientific training.
Yes, it
And I love that aspect of you because I do too. I started out in sciences and then I branched out into the holistic, but I bring the two together.
Right.
And I often teach people that it's not either or, and there's no battle between. You can really bring and merge the two together.
Yeah.
So how do you merge your holistic training and knowledge into your more scientific and conventional trade?
I think right now it's coming from more from a behind the scenes knowledge, in the sense that I do understand where the physical body system comes from on a conventional medical or Western medical knowledge. But now I'm also getting that tie-in on how other energy systems are being looked at, and also where science is going.
Yes.
Because we don't always see in the classic medical journals or nutritional journals, you don't always see that crossover. It's coming more in others.
Yes.
And for people like us who do understand more of the both systems, we can see how it's going to cross over more and more. And what's super exciting is that when you start to see other practitioners who respect the science, respect the nature of science, but also understand that there's certain things we don't know yet.
Yeah.
Or we haven't proven in a scientific way yet, but there's that exploration. There's
Yes.
that desire to understand.
Cool.
And also to respect things that have been around for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of oracle, a lot of people don't know that word, and it goes back to the oracles of Delphi, ancient Rome. So it's not a new term, it's a very old term.
Yes.
People would go to consult the oracle.
Mhm.
So things that have been around for a long time, quite often, not always, but most of the time there's something to them.
Yes.
So now we can start to tie it in with the idea of intuition, the idea of our energy fields,
Yes.
all this that's starting to be proven, and it's so exciting.
That's fantastic. I love how you said that science hasn't proven it yet.
Right.
And that's what I teach people as well is some of these techniques have been around for thousands of years, but science no. And a lot of scientists don't want to look at it yet.
That's right.
And now some of them are starting to, and they're seeing that there's validity to it. So as science progresses, it will be able to prove more and more all of these holistic
I think
techniques.
it's great that there's two of you with a science background here. This is awesome.
And it is. It's
Yeah.
exciting. It's cool. It gives you a different viewpoint on things.
Yes.
It allows. I feel very fortunate because it allows me to understand Western medicine. It gives me a viewpoint on other areas and where people are coming from, and definitely that concept of science not understanding it yet is something I use whether I'm talking to nutrition clients or card reading clients. And one of the classic examples I will use, very, very simple, the earth was flat until we knew it was round.
Mhm.
Bottom line.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
You don't get much clearer than that when it comes to science. I mean, literally, there's a lot of things that are more complex to try to figure out.
Right.
But now we have pictures of the earth from the outside, from further out, whereas at one point they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So we start getting that. And another one that I spoke with somebody today about was the impact of the moon. Like to be connected with the
Yes.
moon, a lot of people feel it on an energetic level. And a lot of people say, no, there's nothing to that. And my answer to that is, it affects oceans.
Yes.
So if it affects
Exactly.
the ocean, chances are it can affect you.
Exactly.
Because we're full of water.
We're full of water and we're a part of the world, right? We're part of
Yes.
the world energy. So some people will feel it more than others, and that's completely acceptable and completely normal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And a little bit more into science also. I saw one study in science, they've mapped out the 3 things that make a person happy. There are
Okay?
3 contributing factors. 2 are very little and 1 is major. The 2 little ones is genetics. Some people are just happy and born lucky, they're happy. Other people, it's their circumstances,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Your job, your relationships, your money. But those 2 things are actually very minor. Doesn't matter what your genetics were, doesn't matter how much money you have or your relationships or your job. What matters is choice. And it's a choice, and once you make the choice to be happy, you have to condition your mind for it. Now, Sheila, each time I've seen you, you're like one of the happiest people I've ever seen. You're always so full of enthusiasm, and you're always happy. Whenever you come out, I was like, I'm going to sit next to Sheila because it's contagious.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm touched. I'm honored.
So my question is, are you one of these lucky people who were born happy, or did you make a choice at one point?
I definitely think that there is a part of me that is just happy.
Okay.
I tend to be, even if I'm going through some pretty rough stuff, which I have been through life challenges, I will still tend to smile at people at the grocery store and be polite, and I have to be having a really bad day to not do that.
Were you always like that, even as a kid?
Good question. I think so.
You
Yeah.
mentioned, intuition.
Yeah.
How does it work for you? Do you get downloads, or is it just knowingness? Like,
Good question. Yeah, because I think it is different for people.
Yes.
They do register differently. For me, if I'm not in a card reading mode, then it's just a knowing, an understanding of things, using that gut feeling, that sort of point where you feel, I should pay attention to that. What is that? When I'm doing card readings, sometimes it's a bit of a download, especially if I'm not live with the person. If I'm doing it by email or if I'm writing it, then it'll feel a bit more, some people would say channeling, some people would say download, depending on the time. If I'm working one-on-one with people, then it's a bit like detective work. So I'll get information that just pops in, and it's very, very fast. So I'm not even really conscious of it. And then as I chat to somebody, I'm trying to figure out which piece of that ties in perfectly to them.
Okay.
So I used the explanation to somebody recently that it's almost like if I had sort of a computer screen going over here, it's working as I'm trying to figure out which one is the right thing for that person at the time.
So sort of like a holistic inspector.
A little bit, yeah. There's definitely detective work, and different readers work in different ways. Some people just present info, like here's the info, off you go. I'm very much, there's a discussion point of view. I like that discussion. I think I'm pretty skilled at it from what I understand. But it's also trying to find that maybe deeper message that we can't always just see with the card, but there's something underneath it, or there's something that needs to be worked on, shifted, and that's where that detective work comes in. And it's also sometimes just for me that I have to clarify something. So I'm getting a piece of the puzzle, but I haven't got the whole sentence, for example. I've got a word, but not the whole sentence. And so as I search and try to figure that out, then it becomes clearer to the client as well as to me.
That is fun. That's really interesting. And you know what? I had some other questions, but I think it'd be more fun for you guys if you saw Sheila in action. So, yeah, what do you think, guys? So should we have Sheila pick a card for me?
That'd be great.
So instead of a question, as far as I understand it, Sheila, I could either ask a question or I could say, what's the message for me today, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to say today, what's the message for me today? Hopefully it's not too personal.
Right. You never know with the card.
That'll be the next video.
So that's right. You might, if it suddenly stops, you'll know why. Okay, so I generally use 3 decks when I'm doing a reading. So I intuitively pick which deck feels the most prominent for the person I'm reading for. I have a 4th deck, but they don't always come on play. So I think we're going to go with these guys. So this deck is called The Gateway by Denise Lynn. And so you're just going to take a deep breath. Just thinking, so what is the thing you need to know right now? What would be in your highest good to know? What's a message? And then sometimes, especially when we've been chatting like this, it's like a hunt to find Jessica. Find her. And unfortunately, these are things you cannot time. They take the time they take. And there we go. All right. So, the card for you, simplifying your life. She's laughing, which is usually an indicator she understands. Okay, so it's an image for anybody who can't see it. It's an image of a person doing a big cleanup. They seem to have a lot of stuff. Things are moving quickly in life. So I would, primarily because of your reaction, I would say that you get it in terms of there are things that need to be simplified. It doesn't feel necessarily like a cleanup of sort of dirt type nature, but more that there are certain areas that definitely have some too much stuff. So if that makes sense to you.
It does make
then
sense.
it's an invitation. And when I look at cards, there are sometimes things that'll jump out or be highlighted or bring a different energy. So in this, it although the picture is of course not moving because it's a picture, it feels like stuff is moving. So as you're going to be clearing up some of this clutter, it's really going to be shifting energies for you.
Okay.
Which most people know, clutter does help when you move clutter. But it really feels like, in French it's like bousculer, like it's really going to move things around.
Okay.
So part of that could also be if you have if there's one room, and it kind of feels like one room that feels maybe a bit more stagnant, or you want something to happen in that room, something to come from that room, and it's not happening. So clearing up the clutter would be good, but it also feels like you need to move furniture around. You need to move stuff around in it.
Okay.
Change up the energy in it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then that energy can shift.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It's really, really relevant, especially about that one room. So
Perfect.
thank you.
Excellent. My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
You're very welcome. Good job, cards. Excellent.
Well, I'm very fortunate to be with these two, my wonderful co-host, and Sheila, awesome.
Thank
This
you.
is so,
Thank you so much.
It was so much fun.